through yourselves, your ancestors, your teachings. I'll get the formality out of the way. Mitsa kwaquilam atna san kaminum kana tamo tnatwea. I kunishkwalans kunski kwitsnala. Kwaklikden kunisglich. Mitsent humathquium lama kwaklikden e Selina August kathanisitla. I say those words at least once a day, and I feel them every time I say them, to be able to speak the language that the land knows, that the ancestors know, that the trees know, that that's in my DNA, is something that I don't ever take for granted. And I am always so honored to be invited to this space, especially because I'm such a nerd and I love reading. There's always a stack of at least usually six books, sometimes up to 10 books that I rotate between all genres. And it's been like that since I was a little kid. And for me, being able to read something that that another person has made public to share, it's such a vulnerable and beautiful and trusting thing. Like, it's the first time I was in the big house and I saw someone dancing. And I thought, that's their soul laid bare. Like, that's everything that they are, and things that, like, we've been taught to protect and hold so close. And every word in each of these books has that same impact, and really feeling like there's just an overwhelming need for me, and maybe for some of you, all of you, a reminder, as we were discussing earlier, that this like 24/7, not enough time in a day, and this feeling of like, you know, colonial systems have somehow extended the 24 hours, and this raw feeling about it, and the go, 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 and I live on coffee, and I don't sleep, and I barely feed myself, and the way it's indoctrinated in us to push ourselves and burn ourselves out, and to not even recognize that it is burnout, to stop and to see the world like through the eyes of the beautiful little baby here. When you guys came in, all we could see was the eyes of the baby, and I said, that's where I want to be. And that is where we need to be, to this, it's not slowed down, it's the actual pace. It's like the river, so many know and refer to as Simon Fraser. It's the Fraser River. For us, it's just olive. It's the river. And that's what time is. Just because we've been pushed to these inhuman standards of go, 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 doesn't mean it isn't in us to know, like, the speed of the moon and the way the sun moves. The sun is not speeding up or slowing down for anybody. The bee is gonna fly at the speed that the bee needs to fly at. And the flowers are going to open when it's right for them. And I'm reminded of this when I get to go gather medicines, and when I get to be on the land. Like, my stylist is he's Haida and Tsimshian, and since 2015 I've been so fortunate to be able to be in Haida Gwaii for 2 to 3 months out of the year. I spend a whole day walking the beach just looking for agates. I don't look at my phone once. I am mesmerized by the water. Nobody's telling the tide, okay, so now you're out of sync. You're 3 seconds off. Now we're all behind. There's no pressure like that from nature, and that's kind of the feeling and the reminder that I got from the books, especially from the first poem of sorry, I've had concussions in my brain, forgets things really fast. I've chosen to find it endearing. Of the mint. Yes, Crushed Wild Mint, the first poem. Even the first poem, hooked. And that slowing down and just going and just being. Like, it's like when you're on the water, you can't help but move with the wave. And that's how I want to move through my life, and that's how being able to read content that people so bravely and vulnerably share, that's how this is making me feel. And I needed that today. I need that for tomorrow. I need that reminder every day. So I'm forever grateful for the reminders of gentleness, of the fact that I don't ever want to be outside of nature, outside of nature's timing, outside of nature's flow, and to give me moments to put myself back in it is a really beautiful thing. And I raise my hands to the sun and the moon and the stars and the earth and even like all the planets and all the things that we don't yet need and get to know that are happening. Because it's not our knowledge. I'm grateful for all of it. And I'm hoping that resonates with some of you as well, that if you need permission to slow down, even in the moments that you can, this is all of these ones out here saying, just slow it down whenever you can. Make your tea thoughtfully, put your shoes on thoughtfully, make your way to the bus stop or to the store with as much gentleness and with as much ease for yourself as you can, because true abundance, I don't think, is about things. It's about peace and that ability to connect with each other and to be safe and to be in that flow. And that's what every book that I've ever read has brought me to. And the work and the space that has been created for Indigenous authors to be highlighted and centered for the power and the beauty that they bring, instead of often the ways that we are centered. And one final thing is that our voices representing for ourselves is such a beautiful thing, and it settles me and it soothes me the way my granny always used to go like this to settle me down. That's what being here and that's what being asked to do the openings and to even just be able to make little connections with you en masse and some of you, because we get to know each other outside of this. So I'm just going to close with the granny song for an extra little bit of soothing, because there is so much happening in our own worlds and in the greater world that I'd love to just share a moment of even more peace, of more grounding, of more settling, and of more gentle. So in whatever way you pray, whatever way you ground, whatever way you call your ancestors, please feel free to do that now. Yo, hey, yeah, he, oh, yeah, he, oh, hey, yeah, he, oh, yeah, he, oh, hey. Yo, hey, yeah, he, oh, yeah, he, oh, hey, yeah, he, oh, yeah, he, oh, hey. Yo, hey, yeah, he, oh, yeah, he, oh, hey, yeah, he, oh, yeah, he, oh, hey. Thank you, and thank you to Massy Arts for always making time and space.
Thanks so much again for that beautiful welcome and the song and the reminders, Audrey. Oh, I'm feeling it. Hi. For those of you who don't know me already, my name is Nevin. I'm one of the hosts here at the gallery. For those of you who don't know me, I'm of Croatian and Irish and French and Métis descent, Croatian on my father's side and all of the other mixing on my mother's side. And that's, but that's how I come to this space. And I'm so happy to have you all here tonight. Not that I'm having you, but I'm having you here as the host. I normally do a much longer acknowledgement, but I want to let Audrey's words sit because I could not have said it better myself. But as a host in this space, I do want to recognize also that I am hosting space on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and that I'm really grateful every day to be a part of this community and to be able to meet all of you and to hopefully create really good relationships with as many of you as I can and foster some space for you to create those relationships with each other and with yourselves. I have a couple housekeeping things here tonight before I introduce our lovely host, Selina. Quick thing about our washroom, if you have not made contact with it yet. We do not have a push button on the door, so if you need any assistance tonight, I will be probably behind the desk. My colleague Dax over there can also help, but I'm sure there's community members in the space that can also help you. We do have a handrail next to the toilet. If you need it, that is there for you. And we're happy to make extra space, move some chairs if you need less barriers as well. So let me know. Otherwise, also, I want to let you know that I have naloxone behind the desk. I am trained and prepared to administer, so if any of you folks need that tonight, or if you encounter anyone who will need that, and I'm the easiest person to access, please don't be afraid to ask. I'm ready to be that resource for you, and I'm ready to provide that in whatever way I can. With that, I think that's all I'll say for tonight, but thanks again. I want to introduce Selina. Hi, Selina, how are you? Selina Boan is a white settler Nehiyaw writer living on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Her debut poetry collection, Undoing Hours, which we have right at the front there, was published in spring 2021 by Nightwood Editions, it won the 2022 Pat Lowther Memorial Award and the Indigenous Voices Award for published poetry in English. Her work has been published widely, including the Best Canadian Poetry 2018 and 2020, and she is a poetry editor for CV2. Please welcome Selina.
Hi everyone. How's everybody doing? Good? Feeling okay? I have to start off by saying, Audrey, thank you so much for that welcome. It was like you sensed. I feel like I needed that, and I was just sitting listening to your song and just really like feeling my ancestors behind me. And I think I just needed that reminder to slow down. I was in a panic because I couldn't find parking, and I was late, and I was like, oh no! And just scrambling a little in my mind. And I did have a moment before I stepped in this door as well where I just took a breath. And I was like, it's going to be okay. It's fine, right? We're here, we're gathering, we're in community, we're celebrating the launch of this absolutely incredible book that, as Audrey so beautifully put, does ground us, right? In that feeling, in the spaces of now and that slowing down. And I think that's something that is so beautiful about poetry, that it really gives us space to just sit for a minute and to remember the beauty that is around us. I think sometimes it's really easy to get wrapped up and not do that noticing, that hard work of noticing. So thank you so much. Okay, I'm starting off by introducing the incredible, the wonderful Samantha Nock. I'm going to read Sam's bio and then I'll say a few other words. So Samantha Nock is a Apyataskawan Isqueo who grew up in Treaty 8 territory in northern BC.
Her family is originally from La Lacrosse, Saskatchewan. Her debut book of poetry, A Family of Dreamers, is now available from Talon Books. Please read this book. You won't be disappointed. Sam, and I've spoken about this before, but I've just long admired her work. She's been an inspiration for me to kind of continue pursuing writing. And just writes with such tenderness about family and love and land, and just turns these phrases that, as a poet, you just nerd out over. So with all, the love of my heart, come to the stage. Woo-hoo!
Thank you so much, Selina. Hello, everyone. Fancy Sam Netzikasa, Dawson Creek, Otinia, Magamaka, Sikirewak, Otinian, Krana, Skomitanawa, Musque, Meski, Squamisheski, Equa, Selichideski, Krana, Skomitanawa, Kakiao. So, hi, my name is Sam. You heard my bio. I grew up in Northeast BC, in Treaty 8 territory, in the BC Peace region, but my family is originally from La Lacrosse, or Sikirewak, in Northwest Saskatchewan. Yeah, I feel like I was really rushed and flustered getting here. I just finished work, and and so I just want to thank Audrey for, I don't know where she went, but I want to thank Audrey for that wonderful welcome and really amazing grounding, and thank you so much, Jess, for inviting me to help you launch your book. This is so exciting, and congratulations, it's so beautiful. And I also love that apparently I only read here when people are launching their books and Selina hosts. So that's perfect. I'm going through a few poems. I gave away the copy I've been reading from this weekend, so I had to crack open one of the new ones off my shelf, which feels funny. I almost asked if anyone has any questions. Any questions, anybody? Alright, I'm going to start with one called More Than Human. Cool. I bloody my knuckles punching the tough crusted snow of my homeland. Watch the pink snow melt into streams. Please carry my heavy spirit to the ocean. Mios and Mina Biakwao Iwapatan. What is it like to trust the prairie crocuses will stick their weary heads through the frost every spring? The rocks sown in my stomach make relaxing into soft grass impossible. The fresh-faced forget-me-nots keep asking, Nimwitsi Nandao Kitsiayan. I keep asking the chokecherries to remind me why they love me. Ota Tsinigi Nitawigin. I shake the red berries from their branches, hoping they'll fall into my hands in tender ways. The problem with shaking berries from their roots is that eventually no berries will be left to shake. I asked the paper birch, Mistaska Giwapatin. Please wrap me in your soft bark, I want to be enveloped fully. Pull me into your firm trunk and swallow me whole. Together, birch tree, we can listen to the wind, celebrate our skins as it blows through our leaves every summer. What an existence it is to be, daughter and sister to all these things, solitary and held in their roots and waters. I can't pull at their tender pentacles, asking if I'll be okay. The melting snow, unearthing fall rot, fertilizes the spring growth as it blooms into late summer harvest, reminds me what will always be. We have to let our dead leaves fall to grow a stronger tree. It's not that I agree. I need to excuse me as I break the spine. And I dog-eared the pages.
Yep, that's love.
Deal with it. For once I can say it's my book, I can do what I want. I also want to say, Selina, that your book, Undoing Hours, is one of my absolute favorites. And I love it so much. I read it all the time. So this book is a collection of poetry that I wrote over 10-ish years. And a lot of it covers growing up, moving to the city when I was 18, and my messy 20s that were a little unhinged. And just navigating, moving from, small rural BC to Vancouver. I'd never been here before when I moved here. And my mom, my auntie, and my cookum drove me up, and I just had like 2 garbage bags full of stuff, and they dropped me off at UBC, and I was like, all right. But this one is called Wayfinding. I'm almost there, 6 stops away. Commercial, McLean, Clark, Glen, Campbell, Hawks. A minute's away from where the blood mixes and where I'm going to spend the next 4 hours exploring the shapes of acquaintances, beer, and cigarettes. If I close my eyes, I can picture the road to Grandma's house. Head down 97 North, turn left at the cemetery, go a few clicks past Ted's service, left again at the Tumbler Ridge turnoff, hang a right at the sound barrier fence my grandpa built 4 summers ago so my grandma wouldn't have to listen to the Jake brake squeals of trucks going down the highway. Follow the loop of their drive past sheds with snares hanging on the door with bear skins nailed on the side. Park in front of the house my grandpa made with logs of wood cut from down the road. Follow the path where I used to dig up red clay with rusty Tonka trucks. To say goodbye, honk the horn and look back. Grandma will be waving in the window. Follow cracked sidewalks to sit on the back steps. Talk about the ways in which these nights feel real and surreal. I am rooted here. Even though I can still draw a map to the field where wild strawberries grow in the summertime, I don't believe in in-between spaces. I don't believe in long-winded monologues about walking in 2 worlds. My existence isn't reconciling the changing seasons with the way I count time by bus stops. How's everyone doing? You don't have to snap or clap. Share a couple more. I'm going off pure vibes only right now, just so everybody knows. I had to work all day to a deadline, and it was writing like a learning module for professors. So my brain is in an interesting place. We'll say that. Right, this one's follow your trap lines home, and the epigraph is a quote from Selina's beautiful book, Living Hours, and it's, if sadness is a legacy, so is joy. We carry the grief of our ancestors. Well, we carry our mother's grief, our auntie's grief, and the grief of the old woman we saw in Shoppers. She has a face like our cookums. The communion of wrinkles gathered in the corners of her eyes, dug deep into brown skin, from laughing, from crying, fighting, and loving us through existence. Her wrinkles sprawl like river deltas, like forest trails, like northern logging roads, like trap lines. This being is lonely and full. We exist in the embodied pressure of what it means to be. It feels like there's an inevitable sadness, and we are just waiting for the levee to break. What more can they expect from us when each passing day it feels like we are either reading or writing our obituaries? Solace comes in small waves, and never all at once. It's the warmth of a lover's palm, joyful moments in the sun, over-steeped red tea. It's prairie laughter crinkling up the corners of our eyes, creating trap lines for each other to follow home. All right. I have one more. Whenever I'm reading, I feel like I'm just like rattling them off. Because I am about 90% caffeine and 10% Vyvanse, so there's no stopping this one. So this last one I'm going to read is called Pagoysigan, and it's a conversation kind of between my auntie and I. I'm not going to do 2 different voices, so you'll have to follow context clues. Auntie, what do I do when he doesn't love me back? Add butter to flour, Sammy. Auntie, how do I crawl inside your rib cage? Add milk slowly. Auntie, he left me for a white girl. Remember to always add a pinch of sugar. Auntie, what do I do when moving on feels like regret? Mix the batter with your hands until it feels like sand sliding through your fingers. Auntie, why isn't his love a revolution? Remember to overknead your dough. Auntie, how do I find myself? If you overknead your dough, Sammy, it will get tough. Auntie, I'm scared of being overkneaded. Heat oil slowly, baby girl. Auntie, why are these memories lingering in my bedroom? If you heat oil too fast, Sammy, it will smoke, and you can't use oil if it starts to smoke. Auntie, I'm being haunted. We cut the dough like this so it cooks evenly. Auntie, what is decolonization? Fry to light brown. Auntie, how do I say no? Serve warm. Auntie, I love you. With butter or lard and honey. Auntie, how do frogs survive the winter? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. I'm really happy you read that last one. It makes my heart happy. Okay, we're here to celebrate crushed wild mint. Okay, I'm going to read the bio and then I have a few things that I would like to say. So, Chiwagi Loth, Jess Housty is a parent, writer, and grassroots activist with Helsik and Mixedler ancestry. They serve their community as an herbalist and land-based educator, alongside broader work in the non-profit and philanthropic sectors. They are inspired and guided by relationships with their homeland, their extended family, and their non-human kin. And they are committed to raising their children in a similar framework and land love. They reside and thrive in their unceded ancestral territory in the community of Bella Bella, BC. So this book, on the back, you'll see it talks about land love, ancestral wisdom, and these themes that sort of circle throughout. And I was thinking about the way that I feel when I read one of Jess's poems. And it's this feeling of being held by language that I think when we're on our territories, when we're on our land, that we have that feeling of being held in this way that's very hard to put into language. And somehow, Jess has managed to put that into language. And that is an incredible gift, because the gift to be able to practice our culture and our traditions on our land is not something that I ever take for granted. I forgot to mention earlier that my bio says I'm mixed, but I am. And my family is from Treaty 6, so we come from Waterhen First Nation and Flying Dust First Nation. But I never had an opportunity to grow up in that community. And so a lot of my cultural experience and practice and ceremony has been in Edmonton on Treaty 6. And just being there, it's that feeling of I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I feel like reading your book, it's I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. You wrote, "There is a hurt in this world, only a river can make it right." Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking about this a lot, especially I'm a high school teacher by day, and I think so much about how do I teach in a good way, in a way that, dismantles the systems that we're in, and really teaches this profound respect for the land. You're beautiful here. Thank you. Come on up.
Alright, everybody. I am astonished and grateful that all of you have come out in the rain and the traffic to be here tonight. It has been an endless series of surprises for me in pulling this book together and putting it out into the world, how incredibly gracious and generous people have been in believing in me and supporting me and talking me through all of the nerves and showing up at all of the phases and stages, and I'm so grateful. Thank you. I am surrounded by lots of family and friends and colleagues here, which gives me lots of groundedness. And I think there's only one person here that stands a chance of heckling me, so that's a good odds. Where I live in Bella Bella, I'm right on the water. My home is on the water, my office is on the water. I spend a lot of time on my boat. I actually never learned to drive a car, but I drive a boat almost every day. And although I can't see the ocean right now, I can feel it. And the first poem that I wanted to share is called Nearshore Prayer. And I just wanted to bring some of that ocean energy into this space. This is a prayer that extends in the direction of the ocean. It is not a story. Nothing is a proper flowing prayer. You taught me that water is the most practiced lapidary, that it can shape and polish all precious things, not just stone, heart and breath, bone and grief. Through you, I know that water has mastered us. Ocean, as I step into you, I ask that you seek out what is precious in me, etch it with your salt fingers, and smooth it against the dip and rise of your sleeping chest. Make me curious about what is absent. Let me redefine wholeness by what is left behind when your hands are lifted away from my body, when you've taken what is no longer mine to carry. I want to really acknowledge and uplift Selina and Sam for being here with me today. I really feel so deeply just the love and generosity of all of the incredible Indigenous writers who are out there in the world doing beautiful things and doing them in such wonderful collaborative ways. I have no desire to stand up here alone. And I'm just so grateful that you're here in this space with me, and also want to acknowledge Clea Spooner, who's in this room, and someday will be launching a book of her own. I have no doubt she's an incredible poet from my community. So please look out for a book from her someday. And I'm so grateful for the sense of community that we build around words and stories and poems and things that we share and put out into the world. At an event that I was speaking at last night, I had a handful of people come up to me at the end of the event and ask why I didn't read any love poems. There are some in the book. And really, if there was a time that I was going to read them, it should have been at that one because my husband was at that event. But I thought I better read one tonight. This one is called Wilderness. I will love you into the grave, yours or mine. I say this not to be ghoulish, but with the simple authority of crushed mint or migratory birds arriving and departing. This is dependent on nothing. It is without conditions. I will love you into the grave, yours or mine. If yours, I will plant wild roses at your feet and tell stories to the sweet insects that chatter against your bones beneath the black earth. I will make them reckon with your goodness, and we will tally up together the enormity of your loving. I will love you into the grave, yours or mine. If mine, I will go to it quietly like an animal to the wakeless forest when its time has come. I will have nothing left to ask for. I will have come home and home again every day of my life to rest in the wilderness of your love. Selina, when you were introducing me, you quoted a line from a poem called Bois, and some of you in this room might know an elder who's passed away, Cecil Polity, and I know you know him really well. He was an incredibly beautiful soul, and I bet that you can find his stories from the Magic Canoe and his biography at Massy Books. They're both beautiful, beautiful books. He was a Haisla elder who was mentor and an inspiration to me, and I know played an incredible role in the lives of so many wonderful people. And when he passed away, I felt a really deep grief that I had never had or never made or found the opportunity to tell him how much his wisdom had meant to me. But one of the things that I found really powerful about him was that often when you were getting to know him, there were 4 questions that he would ask you so that he could understand you a little bit better. And they became the subtitles of this poem that I wrote about him. But his questions were, who are you? Who are you really? Why are you here? And what are you for? Who are you? Some of us are struggling to iterate the void. Some have felt its edges and learned to gently break the call, believing then that they've invented rivers, though rivers have always been with us, to bind our grief, to make us good. Some of us know that our bones are stones in a riverbed, that our bodies are defined by embankments that sway with our breath. Some are softened and rounded by this knowing, leaning into what erodes us until our every atom is a reflection in the gleaming of the water. Who are you really? There is hurt in this world. Only a river can make it right. If you carry the hard shape of unknowing snagged between your collarbones, the river will flow around it and the water will lift it away. You might think a river deals only in intangibles, but truthfully, it could strip your body down to the barest nutrients if you let it. It could rebuild you, bone by bone and stone by stone. There is loss in the world. Only a river can make it right. When you uncover your wound and give it to the river, like the belly of a resting gull, like an alder leaf, like any curling and fragile thing that proves the water's surface is taut, the river washes it bright and clean. You have a choice then. Clasp your hand over the wound, or know deeply that you are fertile and well-watered earth, worthy of planting seeds in. Why are you here? There are mornings when the light is heavy and the weight of it holds us to the ground. There is only one direction then, one way for the river to flow, the rain to fall, down. There are mornings when all things lean toward the light and the weight of it gives us deep roots. You became the light and you gifted us your multitude of directionality. You are glint, water, movement. You are soil, taproot, stone. You are living, most of all in your leaving. You are the current that carries medicine to us and through us, and you are the gleam we stretch toward. No river is a monument, not even in the eager eyes of gulls and ravens at the slow exhale of spawning time. But all rivers, in their way, are monumental. What are you for? There are 4 things about you that make my ribcage bloom like wild aster trusting in the sun. The quietness of your arrival and the power of what you bring with you in your hands like fir bark split from the trunk. I buried my face in the river, breath held, eyes open. When I stood upright, I learned I could navigate by birdsong and see love like landmarks. I watched loss drift seaward. The water makes it light. I watched grief carried east. It floats in the hush and chills. But mostly, I was staggered by the blessings that blossomed in the morning air. There are 4 things about you that make my ribcage crack like stone from the roots and the rainwater of your love, the quietness of your departure, and the power of what you leave behind. You came before, and like all rivers, you will constantly and softly return. I have one last short series of poems that I wanted to share. If y'all are still with me and have the stamina for a few more. And these ones I really wanted to share tonight just to acknowledge the incredible community of people who uplift me in the work that I do, particularly the matriarchs and the patriarchs who hold me up and make me feel strong. These poems are called Aunties. We are here to speak with love of what is overlooked. We are here to speak with tenderness of what is overladen. We are here to hold our palms at the base of a cluster of fiddleheads and say, your tight spirals are beautiful, sisters, but so is the trust with which you unfurl. Let us be the roots. Let us be the light. Let us be what stretches broad and vital in between. Who is at your back? I bring my ancestors in all their humanity. You bring yours. While we dislodge our grief with sacred laughter, lean into one another like the river to the bank, are our ancestors laughing too? Are our great grannies and aunties and mothers who have gone on ahead sitting side by side in the sunshine at the river, holding and upholding each other the same way you were present for me? You invite me to feed my softness. You invite me to revolutionary rest. Your own softness makes this permissible, the sweetness and grace of your emergence from respite transformed. I wanted to hold myself in the shape of your strength, but you call me to recognize the strength I did not see in myself, the gentleness of a seed relaxing into good soil, the power of a root asking for nourishment without apology. As I stand up and speak to the good work in this life, I will continue to gesture to the space where you once stood beside me. This is to acknowledge the strength you have given me. When I speak to what gives me power, my answer will include a blessing of your ancestors for bringing your abundant gifts into this world that we share. Guys, you can.
Do you want to do the Q&A now, or should we break? Do we have to break?
How's everyone else feeling?
Yeah.
Let's reflect. If you'd like, we could do the Q&A now, and then have a little time after for you folks to buy some books and maybe some signing.
Yep.
Does that feel good?
Okay. I'm just like, sorry, I was like in the world that you were painting with, you're such a beautiful reader that I was totally, it's such a special thing. Both of you are such beautiful readers that I just allow myself to kind of float into the poetry world, which is amazing. I wanted to kick off, I feel like both of your books hold hands with one another. You're writing about ancestors and story and land. And I really wanted, I would love to hear from both of you about sort of where, I want to kind of start at the beginning. Like, what does your writing process look like? How does that look? You know, how are you sort of like interacting with the land as you go, etc., etc.?
I don't know if I have a perfect answer for that. I feel incredibly blessed to be born in my unceded ancestral homelands, to be raised there, to spend most of my adult life there, to be raising my children there, and to grow up in a family that spent a lot of time out on the lands and waters in really intimate relationship with, you know, the landscape and our non-human kin. And so for me, that's been a very normalized part of my life. And so is storytelling about those relationships. I grew up in a family where stories were really important. Some of you know my father, he was an epic storyteller and also quietly a poet. And so for me, writing is a really grounding exercise that takes me back to the simplicity of my childhood and how clear and abundant those relationships felt when I was small and innocent. And as complicated as my life has become over the years, it's, you know, through writing and through telling stories, it's just such a wonderful conduit back to that simplicity and that intimacy. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Oh, Selena.
We're exposing it all.
I think for me, writing about, especially about the Peace region, I didn't grow up in Alacross, I didn't grow up in Sigitawak, where my family's from, and I only have gotten to visit a handful of times with my couple when I was quite young, and there are many, many reasons why my family left. And none of which are my stories to tell, but growing up in Dawson and Treaty 8, that area of Treaty 8, I didn't realize how much it had grown me and how much it had helped me until I left and I moved to the city. And just how that place is a part of my family just as anybody else is. So it wasn't, I wouldn't say intentional. It didn't come out until I started writing. And I started healing a lot of parts of myself and working on healing connections with my family and going through that process, you know, growing up. That I noticed that was coming out. And I think through publishing this book and getting to share my work with my family now, it's also an ongoing part of that process, because it's parts that I don't really share so much with my family. So, yeah.
No, that's amazing. I love that. Kind of following on that trajectory of writing and land as well. I'm really curious. This is a question that folks have sometimes asked me with my own book, but I'm curious to know what was the most challenging part about writing your collections. Like, how did they become their final form? Take us through that journey a little bit. Where did they start, and then how have we ended in this beautiful space together?
I'll tell you that I thought the hardest part for me was going to be the editing process, because for me, writing poetry has been such a deeply personal, quiet, intimate act. Like, there's so much solitude in it for me, and it was really terrifying to deliver a manuscript and for the first time have people who didn't know me and weren't invested in, you know, my life and my territory and my worldview and the way of a loved one and reading the things that I've written. But it was actually such a beautiful process to go through that. And so that was a really big surprise for me. I thought that was going to be the hard part, but actually it was one of the most beautiful parts. What was difficult for me was actually making space to write. When I committed to this project, I feel like I've shared this in other spaces before, and some of you maybe heard me talk about this, but I wrote a lot when I was a kid, and then I stopped for most of my 20s and even into my early 30s. And at that time, I was really invested in community service-oriented work and fighting pipelines and trophy hunting and big campaigns and advocacy and activism and stuff that felt really real and really urgent. And I just kept telling myself, it's not productive. It's not a productive use of my time to write. It's not serving anybody for me to write poetry. Like, what a self-serving thing to do. And I convinced myself of that for a really long time. But eventually, the kind of work that I was doing in my community burned me out, because it was so deeply rooted in anger, which was really just fear wearing a mask. And at a certain point, I was really deeply struggling to continue showing up in a good way for my community, which was of the utmost importance to me. And I knew I needed to find a way back to myself and to be able to do that work well again. And it was actually a huge gift
when I committed to this collection to have a reason from outside of myself to make poetry a priority, and then to realize through that process how deeply grounding it is and how strengthened I am to show up in a good way for my community when I can do that grounding work of taking the time to tell stories and write poems and be with myself and be with my thoughts. So that was the big journey for me, was, you know, tied into my healing journey of just learning how to be in the world in a good way. But the hard part was making space, and ultimately I'm so grateful that I did it.
We are also very, very grateful because this book is beautiful.
Making the space for writing is so hard. A lot, some of you may know, I hope none of you actually do. So I used to blog because I am of a certain age and grew up in a certain time. I had a live journal, I had a Tumblr, I had a blog spot, you know, I was everywhere. But a lot of these poems in their early form lived on a blog that I ran for a little bit called A Half-Breed's Reasoning, after a play on E. Pauline Johnson's A Red Girl's Reasonings. That blog doesn't exist anymore. But I think for me, the most difficult or muddiest parts of publishing was trying to publish in itself. It was something I always wanted a book. Growing up, I've written poems since I was little as well, and like, it was this ephemeral thing to have a book. But I didn't know, how do you publish a book? Like, I grew up in the sticks, like, I don't know. But navigating that and navigating it in a good way and remembering to just keep myself grounded and to also protect myself and also my family and my community, and having to advocate in a lot of really complex and nuanced ways to make sure that I'm keeping myself accountable to them through this process, because it's so easy to get caught up in telling stories, and I want to tell all the stories, but again, having to remind myself that a lot of the stories that I do carry in my body are gifted to me through my family's process of living, and they're not my stories to tell, but they are a part of my stories to hold, and to learn that balance and to learn what that means, I think was maybe one of the more difficult parts. Remembering to, you know.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, it's a challenging thing, right? Because I know, you know, in all of our nations we have our different protocols around like carrying knowledge and ceremony around that, and it's sometimes feels, it feels special to just hold it. I mean, we have to, right? Those are like our laws. And this idea, I think sometimes that there's a pressure almost to commodify ourselves. And then, you know, I've had experiences where people have been like, hey, send me some poems, and like, they never took them. You know, I had countless rejections because like those weren't poems that I had the Hewewen in, or like those were poems about heartbreak and me like masturbating or whatever it was, you know? And so I think it's such a beautiful thing to like find that balance in ourselves, and also make sure, as you said, we're making space not only for the art, but also for like our communities and for our kin. It's a really, really important thing. Kind of along that vein of sort of like making space for and time for things. I wanted to talk a little bit, because it's one of my passions and favorite things, talk about language and language learning. And in one of your poems, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. This one?
Gagam.
Gagam? Okay, thank you. Gagam, you write, to learn the language you said, I should first eat a mouthful of soil from the motherland each day, then pray aloud the words I tasted. And Sam, as well, in your book, you use language periodically throughout, which I love, and it helps me practice my Nihewere, and haven't practiced in a long time, and I'm always like, okay, K's or G's. Anyway, but I wanted to talk to you about language a little bit and about that process. I know there's sort of debates of like, do we have translations, do we not? How do we write about language? How do we share? You know, the awkward as I just did, can you help me pronounce this? That kind of thing. And I would love to know what your thought process was related to language in your book, and then how it plays a role in your larger life.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question.
Is it not working?
Can you hear me okay? So for me, the thing that's been really interesting is figuring out what my obligations are when it comes to language resurgence. I am not a fluent speaker. There are incredible programs in my community to do language immersion learning, and those are not programs that at this time of the year that take time away to do. And so, you know, I feel in my core that language preservation and language resurgence is such vital work, and I struggle to find the ways that I can be part of supporting that and uplifting it. And so one very small way for me was to include a little bit of language in the book. I'm sort of the level of speaker that like I can name things. I know lots of nouns and names, but my grammar is terrible. And so I just felt like it was one small way that I could honor the ancestral wisdom that came down to me that helped to make this book real. And I hope someday that I am able to make language a bigger priority in my life and that I can become a fluent speaker. And I think it would be so incredible in manifesting, and I ask all of you to help me manifest that someday someone writes a book of poetry that is all in Hipsapa. And wouldn't that be so amazing? Maybe it'll be clear.
That's a lot. I am very lucky in that I grew up with a cookum and a great grandma in Japan who are fluent speakers, and I grew up in a house hearing it. I heard Cree, the cadence and how it's spoken are so comforting to me. My great grandma, she never spoke English. She only spoke Cree and a little bit of French. And so now being generations removed and not being fluent, there was always this language barrier between us where we couldn't communicate with words. We communicated with a lot of smiles and a lot of pointing and, you know. And my cookum would always be so grumpy when I was in school, and she'd be like, well, why are you learning French? You should be learning Cree. And I'd be like, I hear you. I am a child that simply can't take on the superintendent. And so now I feel like learning, I'm a language learner, and again, I also know a lot of nouns.
Same.
And not a lot of grammar. But to...
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But to get to push myself and bring language into my work is as much as it is for me to learn, but also for others too, because I know I feel so comforted when I see Nahewewen. And the language I use in my book is specifically Northern Cree or Northern Michif that is spoken in Alacrosse, which is a dialect I can't learn unless I literally go to Sikitawak. So to bring that in and I don't translate it, I kind of sometimes clunkily put it into poems because I feel like for the girls who get it, and those who don't can use Google. There you go. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. So putting that that labor onto others is one small mode of resistance, I think, in our work that feels really empowering and lovely. And even the experience that, stumbling over words, like that's an exercise in engagement in some ways. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about love poems, and I'm so happy you did read a love poem, because both of you have, love introduction there, and I have to say, as someone who has tried and failed many a time to write love poems, I just admire when folks can do that successfully. I'm like, how did they do it? And I'm always constantly sort of navigating that. And I also want to bring in that idea of love alongside sort of these undercurrents of grief that exist in both of your texts. And I would love to hear from both of you about how, how did those themes kind of emerge in your work, and how did you find like that balance? And then also tell me your tricks for writing love poems. Okay. Turning into a masterclass for us wannabe poets.
No problem. I can teach everybody to write a flawless love poem.
Yes, amazing.
I think for me, the grief and the love are so intertwined. I would have nothing to grieve if I didn't love it first, and I grieve things that I love because they're so intertwined. I think my biggest struggle with love poems is that I always have this really deep anxiety that they're super cheesy. Yes. And I think they probably are. And they're, like, by far, of all of the kinds of poems that I wrote, if you categorize them, the love poems are the ones that I'm the most self-conscious about. Like, as soon as the book came out, and I was one of the last people that felt like to actually get a physical copy because it took so long to come in the mail to Bella Bella, but when the box of books arrived, actually my husband opened it before I could and pulled a book out, and he was like, so all the love poems in here are about me, right? That's kind of like where I'm most deeply self-conscious, is absolutely that, like, it feels cheesy, but you know what? Fuck it. It's like, it is cheesy, it is chaotic, it is messy, it is real, it is emotional, I feel all of the things, and sometimes the things I feel are cheesy. And so what I tried to rest in was the belief that if I at least wrote authentically, that people would forgive the occasional cheesiness. So I hope that you do. But if not, there's nothing I can do about it. Being in love is so embarrassing. But it's good. It's really good, but it's also like kind of embarrassing. No, I kid, kind of. I always say I've only written one love poem, but I think I've written more. I think the entire book in itself is a love poem to the people and places that raised me. And again, there's so much grief in my book as well, and it is because of the complexities around loving through hurt and loving through colonization is hard. But I do there's two poems in my head right now that I'm like, oh, these are immediately the two love poems I'm thinking of. And one is for a really good friend of mine, and one I wrote, I'm so sorry, one I wrote in the beginning of dating my partner, and that poem has been edited and re-edited so many times through our relationship to the point where it was published now, and it changed as our relationship changed. I'm trying not to look at him in the back right now. If I'm embarrassed, you're coming down with me. But I think I felt the same. I kind of just wrote it and I was like, okay, there you go. And then later I told him, I was like, hey, that poem's about you. Don't talk about it though. But I do think sharing my emotions, which is kind of funny because I have a poetry book, is not easy for me. And so poetry is a way I can do that, and also being
Indigenous, being a fat woman, I want there to be living texts of us talking about our love, and I want that to be something that's in the world for other people to read, even though I'm like, I have to confess to people I like that. And I also wanted to make sure that as much as I am celebrating and processing romantic love, I do have so many love poems to my friends in there as well, because I'm so lucky to have so many soulmates, and I want that to be recognized.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, exactly. It is horrifyingly embarrassing. And I love what you said about it feeling cheesy. And I feel like I've come up across this sometimes when I'm writing, and I've started to resist a little bit, this idea of like cheesiness. And I'm like, but that is also that's a piece of life that's good, and it's gooey, and I want it, you know? And so I think as well, writing into that is again like sort of like this kind of like subtle little form of resistance, at least. Like when I'm hearing you, that's what it feels like.
Well, and I feel like everybody's got to get a copy of Tennille Campbell's
Yes.
poems and
Yes.
just lean into like the cheesy, chaotic, beautiful,
Yes.
unapologetic
Sensuality.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, thank you also both for kind of speaking. I feel like for myself, often love has been really just tangled up with grief, and I think they're kind of one of the same, you know, that to love is to also to grieve, and to grieve is to love, as you kind of said. And I think you both beautifully like dance between that in your work. I want to end with, I feel like I could truly talk to you both forever, and I probably will continue after this conversation on stage, but I want to just acknowledge, both of you individually a little bit. Jess, in Crushed Wild Mint, there's just a precision. There's a precision to both of your words, obviously. But there's a precision in your language that just took my breath away. And I think when I was saying in my introduction, when I was speaking about you, that I really felt like held by these poems, but also that they really took, it felt like we were taking time. Like it felt like I could like breathe inside of your poems, especially, oh my gosh, just so many, salmon scales and scrub cedar and a deer, like there's just so many moments there where I just felt enclosed by the language in the most beautiful way. And then Sam, you just always somehow manage to, you're talking about not speaking, having it hard to speak about your emotions, and yet so often I come to your poems when I'm like struggling through something, and then I'm like, there it is, that's the feeling. That's the feeling that I've been trying to get at. And I think both of you navigate through metaphor and imagery in this beautiful, concrete, strong, gorgeous way. And I just know, people, I think we're talking about ancestors, and I just know, folks are going to be reading your words from now until, forever. So that's really beautiful. I did want to end, though, and ask you what one of your favorite things is about poetry, and then if you happen to have a favorite poem in your collections, and if you would want to read, and we can end with no pressure, though. Absolutely no pressure.
I love it. Oh my god. See, I'm like listening, but also not.
Yeah, no, totally. If like what one of your what one of your favorite things is about poetry, like why poems, I guess is my first question. And then secondly, is there a poem that you particularly love in your collection that you might want to share with us? Either one of you can go first. You don't have to read it by any means, but I'm always so curious because I feel like when folks read my collection, weirdly, they always pick the poems that I hate. And I'm like, that's your favorite poem? Like, what? Why? That was the worst poem. I was up. It was a million drafts. It was this, it was that. And like, I have particular poems in my collection that just, they came to me. They were just like those little moments, and they feel somehow glittery to me in a different way. And so, yeah. But again, no pressure.
That is such a funny experience for me too. It has been really weird seeing what resonates with people, and it's almost always the poems I would never expect.
Yeah. Actually, I just had another thought, just while you're thinking on this. What's been the experience about having your book out into the world? How has that been so far?
Oh my God, it's terrifying. I am coming out of it now. I was firmly in the what have I done phase for a few weeks of like, why did I think it was a good idea to take all of my deepest and most intimate personal thoughts and make them available to literally anybody for 99 It's so vulnerable. But it's been really beautiful also leaning into the uncomfortableness of that. You know, I'm someone who tends to be very solitary and doesn't tend to externalize my emotions a lot. And I tend to be a very independent person, and for this book to be a point of connection to so many people has been really incredible. It's been uncomfortable, but it's been incredible, and I'm really grateful for it. On the question of why poetry, honestly, attention span. I look at people who write novels and I'm like, how did you focus and hold all of that narrative and details and internal consistency for a whole, like, oh my gosh. That is like a level of brilliance that I'm not sure I will ever master. But poems for me are the things that can emerge in the margins and spaces of my life. And they're beautiful and they're whole, and often they're very short, because I mean that's just the reality of what my time is right now. And I have no regrets about poetry versus any other form, but it is really interesting for me also to try to lean into longer form pieces of writing. I'm working on a collection of essays right now, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, the idea of like writing a whole book puts one continuum. I actually read my favorite poem, which was the love poem. It's a cheesy one, but I love it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to read the one that I got from my list tonight because I thought my list was too long. And it's called Banquet. Actually, I've never read this one to people before, so be gentle. Sweet raven, cracking me open like a clamshell dropped from the sky. I will make your feathers shine. Bright raven nudging me apart with your beak. I will be your updraft, your rest. Hungry raven savoring me. I will fill your hollow bones with prayer. Soft raven, I am your perpetual and living feast. I will wait for you. I bring the light. Wow.
Deeply embarrassed right now.
That was amazing.
No. Why poetry? My dad is also a secret poet. He writes poems. He doesn't publish them, but we printed them out on, nice printer paper, and my auntie illustrated them, and that's his poetry book. And that's why I like to think of why poetry for me. And also, yeah, attention span. In my book, I try and play with some longer form poems, some more prosy poems.
It just ransacked my soul and body and spirit, and it was good. It was very cathartic, and it felt really good to get it out there, but it is a scary process. And it's also like, sometimes you get tired of like going into yourself, like I feel that very deeply. I want to just end with asking you folks sort of like, you brought it up a little bit, but kind of like what's next? And then also my classic, the favorites, like I was thinking about the tenderness that exists in both of your work, and sort of like what are you finding in your life that is giving you some of that needed tenderness and care? Yeah.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I'm working on a collection of essays. I've also recently started writing poetry again. I didn't write for probably 9 months. weeks after I finished the manuscript because I just felt so depleted. I felt like I had gone to the absolute depths of everything that I had to give. And honestly, there was a point when I wasn't sure I'd ever write another poem again. But they're coming back to me, and it feels really beautiful. And it feels beautiful to see them sort of collecting thematically and maybe becoming something. Yeah, in terms of what's holding me, I feel like I have this urge always to toughen up and feel less. And I'm trying really hard not to do that and to stay tender and stay messy and stay involved. And vulnerable. It's so hard. It's so hard. But I'm just really grateful to be in my community, be present with my community. I do a lot of youth work in my community, and it is just the best and most humbling thing you could possibly do. And, you know, I get to spend my days surrounded by young people who are so much smarter than me and so brilliant in their healing journeys and like holding so much and teaching me so much. And that's what I want to lean into, is being present with them and supporting them and being of service to them, because that feels like the best and most joyful work I could be doing.
That resonates so much also, being in education and constantly like that feeling of like, okay, how am I going to show up today for those around me? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still not back to writing poetry. I feel like right now I'm just enjoying launching this book because it just came out, and sitting in that and trying to, you know, feel all the feelings of that. I do have a couple projects mapped out. I kind of want to write a novel. Says every writer ever, right? But I have a little bit of an idea for a novel. That's about it. That's about as exciting as it gets.
That's amazing. The novel is so daunting. I'm also kind of like, should I do it? Can I do it? It feels really scary. I'm so excited for both of those potential projects. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up? It's your launch, so I kind of would love to end maybe in just if there's anything else you want to share or talk about.
Just gratitude. I know Patricia had to leave, but when Massy emailed and asked if I would be interested in having an event here, I was like, of course. That is the dream. Like, that is my blue sky place that I would love to celebrate what I've put into the world. I'm just so appreciative of Massy and everyone at Massy for holding it so beautifully and making it such a culturally safe space, and being so kind and generous in the way that happened. And I'm so grateful that they helped to bring Audrey and both of you into this space too, because, like I said earlier, I don't have any interest in doing this by myself. We don't do anything in isolation. We do things together in community, and I'm so grateful for that community. I also have lots of gratitude to Nightwood for believing in my ability to do this, and just to all of you for choosing to be here. I know what a precious place it is with your time and your energy and the weather and the traffic and all of the things that you could have chosen over being here, and you're here. And without you in front of me, I actually have nothing to say, nothing to share. I feel very helped by all of you, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm really grateful to have a baby in the room and hear the little gurgles and squeaks and just remember why we tell stories.
Thank you both so much. If you haven't bought their books, they're there. They're for sale. They're shiny. They're beautiful. You can get an autograph. So please buy their books. And thank you both so much for sharing your time.